We canoed across the river, and we were going to stay on this island, and everyone was telling us about that the weather was going to be bad, and there were tornadoes and stuff in the forecast, and we didn't really pay any attention to that. We just got in the tents to get some shelter from the rain, and the canoe just blew through the tents and hit us in the head and blew down the river, and the two guys that were still outside were screaming. And there was a cabin across the river, and so we decided that we should just try to swim across and get over there. Me and Dave were holding hands and trying to hold on to each other, and then I just remember saying, "Let go, I can't swim, you can't swim." There was a search party. A lot of local people were helping look for him. I stayed there the entire time. For the first few days, I really didn't think that he had died. I just thought he went down the river a ways and got on the bank and he was hurt, and that we'd find him. I think I spent a lot of time just laying down after that for months.
That evening, I actually was scheduled to give 2 devotions for a couple halls in the dorm that I was staying in, and the title of my testimony was "God Doesn't Waste Pain." I shared with them the difficult things that I had been through in my life, and I told them how God had made everything good. When I came back to my apartment, I got a phone call on my cell phone. It was the fire marshal for the county, and he asked me if I knew who Bobby Mason was. From there, he just continued to ask me some more questions, if I knew if he was feeling well, if he had been on any medication, and then he told me that I should come down to the hospital right away. That evening, he was playing a game of pickup basketball, and he had a heart attack, and he was 23 years old. The next time I saw him, he was laying in a box, and his eyes were glued together and his lips were sewn shut. There was a lot more than just his body laying in that casket. Like half of my life was in there with him.
I didn't know what was real. I remember looking outside my window and not knowing if the ground was real or the couch that I was sitting on was that real. It felt like when I went back to school that I was kind of like on autopilot or something, and I had all this homework to do, so I kept up with all of that, but inside I wasn't there at all. It was just like this outside person doing all this stuff. Everything was about Dave and about what happened, and I was drawing all this like stuff about water and rivers.
I cried for about 6 months straight after he died. And like sometimes the pain was so deep that my skin hurt. I would weep so much that I couldn't breathe sometimes. So when I even remember, like there would be people in our living room just like watching a movie and laughing and stuff, and I would be in my room, like crying and painting. This particular painting was one of the first ones that I completed after Bobby's death, and so that was a big deal for me to finish something. I took a picture of a memory that was really significant. Bobby and I used to double date with an 80-year-old couple, and we would go to a local VFW and dance with them. And this is a picture of one of the evenings that we spent with them, and you can kind of see like there's a band back here, and like this is the sign. And here is a guitar. And I just like kept trying to paint this image and to try to make it look like the way it was, and to try to just like accurately document it, and maybe in a way to try to make it real again. I just like kept painting on it and spent hours and hours and hours on it. And then finally one night I sat and I just started putting all of these squares on it, and I took a grinder to it and I grinded it down, and it helped me to realize that that was good and that was beautiful, but that's also something that's done.
Maybe this was the moment that I always wished for a little bit. I always wanted to find him and, be reunited. I would have wished it was alive, but still I always wished that I would have, been able to hold on to him or something.
I named this image Submiss because I feel like she's more of an object here. She is being required in a lot of ways to submit herself to the energy that's around her, to the space that's around her. Is representational of what I was going through because it wasn't a choice that I made to be where I was at. I feel in some ways that it was just like you're thrown there.
This was a much more indirect way and less intrusive way of talking all this stuff out without actually saying them out loud directly to people.
I have a large series of her dressed as a normal person, but her eyes are covered up. And at the time, and I didn't think anything of it, I thought that it was just an interesting concept, but then it's something that's still unfolding for me, that some of the defense mechanisms that I built up through the grief process, and also just some of the ways that I tried to hide from people.
Like there was this really slow, depressed mode I would be in that was more comfortable because it was more familiar, but then also I would jump to this really panicky mode where everything was frantic and speeding. I made this print during that time, and she's the same face, but just in a reflection of water, which again, the water imagery. It's called Resent, and I was just getting really angry with everyone, like all my friends that were so happy, and I just that made me nauseous, you know. I hated seeing them be so happy and me being so hateful. I wanted to rip the ground out from underneath them and just, you know, see how they felt about things.
Art for me is interesting because it's pretty impulsive and it's pretty intuitive. I rarely title something and I rarely know what I'm doing before I do it, but it's more of me sitting down, and it's more about the intensity and the brushstrokes and the color and the feeling of the painting rather than it being a subjective thing. And so for me, especially painting, it's documentation of a moment. Like the paint understood me and it transcended words in a lot of ways. Like when I couldn't find the words to say, or words weren't big enough, the way that a canvas or a piece of masonite was able to relate to me and to process things for me. I imagine a dandelion as it goes to its death, all those little white seeds come around, and then the wind catches it and it just plants its seeds everywhere. I feel like that is such a clear representation of what happened in Bobby's death, is that he was this young dandelion that died, and these seeds were planted in so many ways. Helping some people with special needs use art and as a way for them to be confident and as a way for them to not have to live life in these boundaries. And when you sit someone down who has autism and you give them a paintbrush and you give them a canvas and they can do whatever they want with it and they don't have to be told to stop or be told to use this color or that color, and they create something beautiful. It's proof that art is just more than a pretty picture on the wall.
I got like this really strong confidence in myself that I know I can never be completely broken again.
An interesting thing about the way that God works is he's the ultimate teacher and the ultimate healer, but that isn't done by using a magic wand, and it isn't done by a snap of the finger, but like teaching through experience and teaching through knowing. And what like the greatest gift about the process and about that deep time of healing and changing is that it's something I know deep in me. Like in scripture it talks about, like, I have only heard of you before, but now I see you with my own eyes.